Okay, so what I have here is salt that I obtained from the local coastline. There's a certain spot where the rocks are that where the water splashes up, but it doesn't drain off. It's just high enough above the a high tide, you know, and so the water splashes up in this little pocket and collects, and there's these little pockets of salt. So I collected this salt, and you can see the rocks in there. Of course, there's all these particles and stuff. And what I've done is cleaned it, and that's what I'm showing this video. This is some salt that I've already cleaned. It started out like this, that I basically just take and liquefy and put enough water. What you do is you put enough water in there so that the salt it dissolves. You have to have enough so that the saturation point of the water is greater than the amount of salt that you have. So it took some processing. I had to use quite a bit of water, and then what I did was I took this little pour over coffee filter, and I was using, instead of a coffee filter, I would take and use a piece, about a half piece, you know, like this size. I would take that and fold and put it in there in the bottom. I'm trying to do this, but you know, just make a little filter. That's not even big enough, but because you'll have to change it. It usually, you can see the stuff floating. There's, you know, stuff that would clog the filter. So usually after one pour, one full thing here, it would drip in. I would, you know, would have the water here to drain into there. And then what I was doing is boiling it off. I would boil the water off so that and now, as you can see, it's too tight, but you can see that there's much finer particles of salt, and also it's clean, right? Because I liquefied it. I ran it through a filter and then boiled the water off on the stove. So that's pretty much the basics of how I got this salt. And you can see I had almost a gallon of salt here. I think I'm pretty well set for life on salt, or at least I'll be able to share that. Now, I did contact a lab. I was curious to see if and I know it's possible, but it would probably be expensive to test this, to see, and you know, just to make sure that what's in it. I mean, it looks clean enough, right? But I just wanted to test and see what the mineral content is. It would be interesting to see how it compares to, say, like Celtic sea salt or what. And also, you know, to see if there's any contaminants, because I did just obtain it off of the local coastline of California, USA, and there's pollution out there, I'm sure, oil stuff, but you know, I'm not so too worried and concerned about it necessarily. I think a lot of our fears are just fears, and they're maybe, you know, not as drastic as we like to make them out to be. So at any rate, there's that. That's how I've gotten salt. I'll add a lot more water to this because there is quite a bit of salt in there. So there you go. So okay, here's the salt water after I've liquefied it. You can see now it's boiling, And what I do is, you see, I'm just trying to look both things. I'll take this foam off here that's got, you know, whatever it is here that's in this. And this is cleaning, and also I guess sterilizing, or you know, killing any of the microorganisms that might be in here. And that's probably what these are, this stuff. And it'll build up around the edges as it boils down. Yeah. It's another step. As you can see, yeah. So I'm at this point. I've filtered it all out. I've filtered the water, and now I'm boiling it. And it'll be a little while. It'll boil down the liquid a little ways. I don't want to boil it all the way down in this pot, because when it'll solidify. It makes a real solid. When the water leaves, it turns into crystal again. It's solid, so it will stick in the pot pretty good and solid. I mean, I've had to learn this that way, and actually, the other day when I was doing the most of it, I ended up putting water back in the pot just to, you know, to break up some of the stuff. So it's kind of a process. It's really interesting to see how this this layer forms on the top. And as the water boils off, the concentration, or the salt starts falling out of the water, crystallizing in the bottom. Yeah, I think that's part of the salt layer there, just starting to form on the top. And like I said, as the water boils down, the solution gets more concentrated, and the water can't hold. The water can only hold about 28% of salt, and beyond that, it's called a saturation point. The water is saturated, and it will not hold anymore. So it crystallizes on the bottom or around the edges, etc. Yeah, so here's cleaning salt.